Come away with anything cool? Let me ask you something. Did you guys have a plan when you go out on the water tomorrow as how you're going to kind of prepare for the race? I mean, we all know, right, we're going to get out there 45 minutes or an hour before the start, right? That's kind of the given. We all want to get out there early so we can get some real good preparation. Do you guys have like a tuning partner or a buddy that you kind of set up with? If not, can I make a suggestion that you grab somebody that you enjoy sailing around, that you enjoy tuning up with? This is something that's been really valuable to me, is to have somebody that we can line up with at the start, or before the start, I should say, and we'll split tacks. I'm sure you guys have heard about that. Probably you've done it a million times. But in a situation like where we're going to sail out here this week, where from what we've heard, it might be one side comes in, it might be the other side comes in. If we do that split tack deal where we start, somebody yells start and you sail for 3 minutes, you tack and you sail for another 3 minutes. Or if you have lots of time, maybe you sail for 4 minutes and then come back for 4 minutes and then you meet again. And invariably somebody will have made a big gainer and you come together and you talk about it. And then if you have time, if you're out there an hour ahead of time, you get to do it again. You do it again, and if that same thing happens again, then you might say, there might be a method to this madness, and maybe the right sides come in, or maybe it seems like there's more pressure on the left. But a lot can be gained that way. So let me ask you this. What would you do if you sailed those split tacks, you did it twice, and the right seemed to come in both times by like 100 yards? You split tacks, you came back, and the boat that came from the right side was ahead by 100 yards. Do you think you would start at the weather end of the line and bang the right corner and go all the way out? No? What do you think there? Then what? No, were you shaking your head no? Because that's the right answer. I was going to suggest, I'm glad you're shaking your head no. No, we don't necessarily want to bang the corner, right? Because that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen that way every time. But what it might be is that's the side we want to watch and protect. So when we start, and would we want to start at the weather end, all the way up at the boat if we think it's gonna, if that right is proven? Maybe we want to start closer that way. But how often do we want to start right next to the boat? How often do you want to be right there? Is that a dangerous spot to be, you think? Yes, I agree. Because what? Because we're rolling the dice that the right's going to be the only side to come in, and if the left comes in, it's impossible to get there, right? So what we want to try to do is protect that side. So anyway, if we do this split tack deal, we'll have an idea of what we ought to watch for. It's not going to tell us that's the game plan, or hopefully it shouldn't tell us that's the game plan, that's what we want to do every time, but it's going to give us a good idea of what we want to watch for. And it's hard to do it by ourselves. If we do it by ourselves, we sail out, we get a knock and we tack. Okay, so we got lifted out there on the right side, and while we're doing this split tack, we want to watch our compass, but really we need a buddy to be able to show us, in true fact, what has happened there. So I'd suggest trying to find yourself a buddy, line up with them, and when you're going back downwind afterwards, you're talking about what you saw, what you felt. Yeah, I got a little shot of breeze, the compass went up 10 degrees, we hit a bunch of motorboat waves, so it wasn't a really good test. Whatever it takes, but having that communication is huge. The other thing that's cool to have with a buddy is to speed test beforehand. And I'm not suggesting we go out to try new things, set up our boat differently, go through a whole bunch of different things. But don't you think it's important when we get out there the first time to be confident that we're in the right gear? We're not going to change our tuning, obviously, because by this time we all know the tuning, right? We all know where we want to be. We want to be in the right spot. But it'd be nice to know that we've got things set up right. We got the traveler at the right height. We got the jib at the right spot on the spreader. We got the right amount of pre-bend, if we're adjusting our blocks. And the only way we're going to be able to know for sure is to line up with our buddy, and be able to go through the gears a little bit. So that same person can be a huge help to us, for even if it's just 5 minutes before the start to sail along, and the goal isn't to wipe our buddy out, go way faster, way higher. It's to be able to line up alongside them and kind of determine that, yeah, we're set, we're good. thanks. Are you good? You feel good? You know, just when you're working together like a team, it makes a big difference. Okay? So I'd suggest when we're done here, you know, try to find somebody that you can hook up with to go out there to help you kind of set up your game plan. It'd make a big difference. You know, and then so let's talk just a second about boat speed, if you don't mind. Anybody have any questions? I'm speaking to the juniors, obviously, but if anybody else has questions, I'm happy to answer them. So let's talk a second about boat speed. And can I just share with you a little bit about my experience now in the college sailing regime. I'm a coach at the College of Charleston, and when I first got there, maybe I thought college sailing was going to be all about the start and all about tactics. You know, that's all it is, because the courses, the weather legs are like 3.5 minutes long, and the whole race is maybe 12 minutes. But I couldn't have been more wrong. Unfortunately, because I like boat speed so much, it is about boat speed. So the moral of this, or the part about this little talk, is how important boat speed is to our racing, whether we're sailing a 3/4 mile weather leg or whether we're sailing a 4-minute weather leg. Because when the weather leg is so short, we don't have the time to really be smart and hit every shift. We have to set ourselves up to be very conservative. We have to set ourselves up so we aren't taking any risks. And good college sailors never end up on the corners. They're always in the middle, right? Because if a shift comes in, they got to be able to get there to get a piece of it. Otherwise, they'll lose half the fleet, you know, just like that. Well, the only way you can play the middle, the only way you can stay off a corner and be competitive is to be fast, you know? We have to have speed. We have to have boat speed to play the game. And it's interesting, in our practices at our college, we spend more than half the time speed testing, working on boat speed. But that doesn't mean we get out of tension gauge. It doesn't mean we're taking measurement at the transom, because all the boats are set up ahead of time. And obviously, as you guys know, because probably a lot of you do some high school sailing, a lot of you guys have done Sears Cup, Bemis, and that kind of stuff where you rotate boats. You never get a chance to even consider the tuning of the boat. So boat speed means something different. Boat speed means how you're steering the boat. It means how you and your crew are working the boat. It means how you're changing gears. And it's kind of cool because it takes the emphasis off of tuning, which I think is correct. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's so easy, especially when we sail a Lightning with all the stuff we have to work with, to get caught up in tuning and making sure that we are absolutely perfect in this dimension and we have this tension here. And while we want to be as close as we can and follow the tuning guide, which we've all done, and let me just say right here, right now, if any of you guys have questions about your tuning or you'd like to double check your numbers or whatever, I'm happy to help you with that, and I'll do it right after this. So if you guys say, man, I don't know if I got this right or not, you know, please come up and grab me or grab anybody, and we'll go out and check your boat, because that's one of those things you want to check off the list and not have to think about anymore. But once we're out there sailing, we want to make sure that we're doing all the things right that we can to get the boat to go through the gears. And, you know, it seems like tomorrow we may have conditions similar to today. I don't know if you guys have looked at the weather. It might be a little bit more around to the right, which is tough to tell right now what is right and what is left. But it doesn't appear it's going to be real windy again tomorrow. So let's talk about some of the things that are important in making a Lightning go fast in light air, you know. And there are lots of people that have a lot of different ideas that know that it makes a difference to them. So if you have suggestions, anybody else, please, you know, don't be afraid to yell them out. But I'll tell you the things that I've found mean the most to me to make the boat go fast in light air. First, we want to make sure the main is flat enough. Okay, so when we talk about tuning and all that stuff, we want to make sure we have the mast bent properly or pre-bent properly and all that, so that the main is flat enough so that the leach will open up. Okay? How do we do that? How do we make that happen? Yeah.
Sometimes if it's shut off, you gotta use a bit of backstay. Might open the leach.
You can use a backstay, but we'll talk about what that's a good question or a good point. But there's one issue that might happen if we use the backstay when we talk about the jib. So what else might we do to make sure that we got, and what is the guide? Here's the other thing. What is the guide to tell us that we got our mast set properly and the sail's going to be the right shape for light air? What else? What do we look at? Yeah.
Top batten and mast.
Well, yeah, that's one guide to get the main sheet right, is that the upper batten is parallel to the boom, or maybe a little bit outboard. You know, we can get underneath the boom and eyeball that job, and if the upper batten's angled outboard a little bit, that's good, because that's going to give us some acceleration. What else? How about overbend wrinkles? You guys heard that cool technical term? Speed wrinkles, right. That, I think, is our best guide. As long as we're set up so we have overbend wrinkles that go from the mast down towards the clew, and they go halfway back on the boom, and it doesn't matter what kind of tuning we have, what kind of sails we have, how we're set up or whatever, as long as we have those going, then the mast is set well and the sail is going to be flat enough. Okay, and does that make sense? Any questions on that? Now we get that from messing with the blocks, the lower shrouds, and really there's not a whole lot else on a Lightning that we need to worry about in light air except the blocks and the shrouds. Okay?
So don't you come off of that overbend condition a little bit when you're sailing?
When you're sailing?
Yeah.
No, we always, I mean, at least I always have looked to make sure we have those overbend wrinkles in all conditions. And the windier it gets, you know, we don't want more than that, but if we have that all the way across the board, then we know we've got the mast set well.
And so describe to us what those wrinkles look like in terms of size. I mean, I can have big ones or little ones. Or...
You know, that's maybe, some sails like to have big honking wrinkles that are like gutters a couple inches deep, you know. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but some like to have fairly big wrinkles. Some like to have fairly faint but definitely distinct wrinkles. But I think you want to be able to look at them and just glance at them and know they're there. If they're not there, in my mind, the sail's going to be too full. You know,
Wow.
I mean, and you know what's interesting? I think it doesn't matter what kind of boat we're sailing, whether it's a Lightning or a Thistle or an FJ or a 420. You know, when the breeze is on, for example, we make sure we have those overbend wrinkles. So it really,
There's a lumpy sea.
even if there's a lumpy sea, because what we'll get at here in a second, the lower part of the main is not the part of the sail we want to make fuller to make the boat more powerful. I think we want to make it up top and in the jib, which is the next step I want to go to you guys. So basically, we've got the mast bent, we got the overbend wrinkles. What do you think? If we want the main kind of flat, where would we want the outhaul? How tight do we want the outhaul? It's in the tuning guide, and it's something that once it's kind of set, we really don't mess with it much. And they say there's that seam that goes from the tack to the clew, maybe 1.5 inches off the side of the boom, and that's good enough. We don't need to really think about it much. When it gets windier, we close the shelf up, but fight the urge to make the sail big and fat and baggy. That's my point here, guys, is that if the main is big and fat and baggy, we aren't going to go fast and we aren't going to go high, okay? And the boat will be out of balance. So with that, any questions on the main? Does that make sense? I'm happy to take a look at it on the water tomorrow if you want to double check it. So how about the
it doesn't
jib?
make sense.
Pardon me?
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't?
It's kind of counter to what we all read in the books about how to set a main.
Well, here, I think the part that's important is the balance of the boat. What do you guys want to feel on the tiller when we're sailing, even in light air? That's a loaded question. We all know that. Nothing, right? We want to be able to let go of the tiller and the boat's going to keep tracking straight, right? It's got to be going smooth and no drag on it. Because if we have helm and we keep yanking on the tiller to keep the boat going straight, we're dragging the rudder through the water, and it's going to create drag and slow the boat down. So we want to be able to let go of the tiller and the boat will keep right on tracking. I'm not suggesting that's the way you check it, you know, but the point is, if the main is full, right, the main's powerful, it's going to want to turn the boat up into the wind. So the main needs to be like a guide to steer the jib, which is going to be full. So going with that, how do we make the jib full for light air? What's the thing we look at there? Yeah.
We always just put the jib wire on and throw it before, so it's just
Good, exactly. But not any tighter, right? Because what makes a jib full, you guys, is the amount of sag you have in the forestay. You know, the forestay is all whippy and can move around. In light air, it's really important that the jib's hanging or got that sag like that because that sag actually adds fullness to the jib. So you kind of picture it like the jib is pulling the boat forward and the main is like steering the boat. So it's like a flap and the jib is fuller and more powerful in dragging the boat. So this goes back, remember when you said pull the backstay on in light air? Normally that'd be the right thing to do because it'd open the leach up. But what happens is when you pull the backstay on, it pulls the sag out of the jib and makes the jib flatter. So if you can fight the urge to pull the backstay on, the jib will stay full and everything will be happy and the boat will balance. Does that make sense, you guys? Any questions on that? Is that too boring? But you know, it gets right back to the basics of what are we trying to do? We're trying to make the boat balance. We're trying to make the boat track. We're trying to make it easy to accelerate. And we're trying to make it uncomplicated. Because when we hit waves, a boat that's fidgety is going to stall. A boat that'll track fast and be easy to bear off will be much faster, stay faster. You know, it's a good...
Greg,
yeah.
could you go through the steps of starting the boat speed up with the saggy jib and how you get that jib a little tighter once your speed is up and that whole progression of accelerating the boat and light air?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
I don't know, did you guys hear Bill's question? How do you make the boat accelerate, you know, and how do you go through the gears basically in light air? And it's funny, at the college, we probably practice that a week, probably an hour and a half a week. You know, we practice like 8 hours. So we spend a lot of time just on that drill, stop and go. And, you know, your inclination is, let's just say we're sitting there on the left, on the starting line, left one trying to get going. The inclination is to heel, and even in a lightning, to heel the boat over and then rock it flat. Now we got to turn around before we do that, make sure there's not an umpire or a judge behind us. But you can get away with that a lot in college sailing. That's the way it works. But what we found is when you do that and you squish the boat flat, it goes sideways. It doesn't go forward, it goes sideways. So instead, the move is to have the boat on the normal heel to start. You heel it to weather a little bit. The jib comes in to our acceleration mode, which where would it be? Like the end of the spreader? Maybe today, maybe a little bit outside the end of the spreader, you know? And the main, going back to where you were saying about the upper batten would be angled out maybe 25 degrees. So we're in full acceleration mode. Now why are we heeling the boat to windward? What's the deal there? What are we trying to make happen?
Figure it off.
Yes, exactly. So we're trying to do that without using the rudder, right? Because if we bore off using the rudder, especially on a lightning, we're just going to create drag. So if we can let the boat flatten out or sail to, or heel to weather a little bit, man, it'll take off. It's all relative, taking off today, of course, but it'll accelerate. Then we flatten it out, okay, get the boat going again, and the jib comes in to maybe in light air today. I know you guys know better. Were you ever inside the end of the spreader today? Was there ever enough wind where you came inside? How heavy did it get? Did you ever get 2 crew on the high side? 1 crew on the high side? Not really. So you probably weren't much inside. Like probably Tanner, you were maybe at the most an inch inside?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be, there's the key is how long it takes from that acceleration time to where you're into that inch inside the spreader. And I'm guessing, you know, like on a college boat, it's maybe 5, 6, 7 seconds. In a lightning, maybe 10 or 12 seconds before we're fully up to speed. Then you can trim the main in to where you're talking about the upper batten parallel.
Okay, talk about the action of the main during that maneuver. Main sheet.
Well, so we've got the main, we're sitting there luffing, right? Or let's say we're parked on the line, the jib's luffing, the main's kind of in because we're holding the boat up close hauled, very, very close hauled, you know? Because that's the way we want to protect the hull, right? Where we're stuck up into the wind. Jib's luffing. Now we want to bear off. So the jib comes in tight to bear the bow off. The main goes way out, right? And we heel the boat over to weather, like you said, so the boat will bear off. Then we flatten it out, trim the jib in till we're inside that spreader, or no, till we're at the spreader because we're going to wait 10, 12 seconds to go an inch in. The main comes in to where you're saying, you know, the upper batten angled outboard a little bit, and then we're rolling. What do you think about heel, you guys? How much heel? Tell me what happens when we heel the boat too much. what happens? What's that? You head up, right, exactly. But let's say we're sailing along and we're close hauled and we're heeling where the chine is like that far out of the water on the weather side. I'm gonna suggest that's a whole bunch of heel. You know, we're heeling like 15 degrees, 20 degrees, and light air. We sometimes like to do that. But what's the disadvantage of that? Yeah.
You'll side slip.
Yeah. We heel too much. We're gonna side slip, and we're gonna want to head up, and we're gonna get helm. So when we get helm, we're pulling on the rudder again to keep the boat going straight. So this is going to sound weird, but if we can sail the boat sort of flat, so the chine's just barely out of the water, then we'll be able to trim the sails right and go much faster. Interesting in this college sailing stuff I was talking about, you know, everybody likes to heel the boat way to weather going downwind, for example. We found what's really fast is to sail straight up and down because we want that helm to be neutral. And as a result, I'd like to say our guys are pretty speedy downwind. So if we focus on the heel, on the feel, it's going to be much faster. Okay. Any other questions, you guys? And I don't want to drag us out, but I got one more thing that I want to do. Anybody else? Yeah.
How much do you play with the vang?
Well, the vang. The question was how much do we play with the vang? There would have to be some breeze on to use the vang.
So you just take the slack out of it and just...
Good question. And that is a common thing in like FJs and 420s. The team they used to like to take the slack out of the vang. What do you think is the problem with having the vang snug when you have the main trim? We hit waves, bam, 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 and we want to accelerate. What do we want to do?
You need more power.
Yes, we want to ease the main sheet out. If the vang is snug, the boom can't go up. So my point is in light air, or even breeze when we don't need the vang should be like all the way off,
okay,
so that you can twist that upper batten angle 25 degrees out. When we're coming out of attack, we want to be able to ease the main so that top batten will angle outboard, and if the vang's on at all, it'll restrict that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay, any other questions, you guys?
Greg, how about determining which end of the starting line is favored for the juniors? In other words, when you go out and assess the starting line, give us your method of doing it that'll probably benefit everyone.
Well, you know, it's interesting. As I watch college sailing more and more, I become more and more conservative. You know, if you start at the leeward end of the line or in the leeward third, you are assuming that the first part of the beat, the left side's going to work. If you're going to start at the weather end of the line, you're assuming that the right side's going to work, or something really crazy is going to happen, and I'll explain that here in a second. So I guess first, all else being equal, I would really rather be in the middle of the line, just so you have the opportunity to get to either side, you know, knowing that we're going to lose some boats maybe on both sides. So we have to kind of change our strategy, and from thinking, I want to win the start, and I want to kick it, and I want to be 100 yards ahead halfway up the beat. In my mind, that's really unrealistic. What we want to have is a good start that we can kind of get where we need to get, okay, halfway up the beat. Obviously, to be able to start in the middle, you got to be fast. You got to get off the starting line and change gears, so that's really important. But to find which end of the line's favored, so if it was a leeward end favored, you'd start closer to that end. If it's a weather end favored, you'd start closer to that weather end. There are a lot of ways to check the line. The way I like to do it, that to me is very quick, very straightforward, and you don't have to really judge it, is using the compass, where we all head into the wind to get a head to wind, you know, checking out where the weather mark is, what the breeze is doing. Hopefully we're checking it before the start, every 30 seconds or so we know if the breeze is shifting back and forth. But we get that head to wind reading, and then we run the line, and if it's less than 90 degrees, we know it's leeward end favor. If it's more than 90 degrees, it's weather end favor. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways, and the cool thing about that is sometimes you don't even have to write it down on the deck to subtract it, you know. It can kind of come out. But the cool thing about that is it tells you how favored it is, and if that means you should push it down to the leeward end a little bit more, or if it's only 5 or 10 degrees, can I get away with starting more towards the middle to be very conservative? Does that make sense? And there's a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of people have different ways. Some people like to run the line with the main out, so it's just luffing along the luff of the main, just barely east over east. Then they tack or jibe and run the line the other way. And if it's luffing more, it's telling you the breeze is in front. If it's all the way full, it's telling you the breeze is behind. And that's cool, and that's what they do in college, because obviously they don't have compasses, but it doesn't tell you just how much it's favored. That's why I think the compass is kind of cool. What do you guys do? What's your favorite way? You guys have a... Had to win? Yeah. Okay. Good. Anything else? Any other questions? Did I answer that one okay, Kip? Was there...
I was doing that. I'm fine with it.
No, I know. I mean, I didn't know if there was something else that... Okay, you guys, one other thing, and then we'll call it here real quick. But every day, I was hoping when we have our little debrief in the afternoon, we'd cover something, a part of the course or boat handling or something just specific that wasn't necessarily related to that race course. And today, what I thought we would cover briefly is rounding the weather mark. We always talk about rounding the leeward mark, and we beat that to death, about how we got to go wide then tight and all that. But often we don't think about the weather mark, because it's just, maybe it's even a bigger deal sometimes down there. So could you help me hold this up? Oh, decent. Yeah. So, as we're rounding the weather mark, you guys, you mind if we do this? Is this okay to do this real quick? I promise this won't take long, okay? Weather mark, offset, and we're approaching the weather mark. And the question of the day is, do we do a bear away or do we jibe, right? And how we're going to round this mark if we're going to do one or the other, okay? So, basic question first, how do we know if we want to jibe or we want to do a bear away? What's that? What was the breeze doing when we came into the mark? If we were lifted, what would we want to do? That means if we were coming in on a higher, right? We want to jibe, right? Because the breeze is out of here. So as we're approaching that weather mark, even before we get on the ley line, one of the things we're hopefully talking about with our team is, oh man, we're up 15 degrees. So our move is here pretty quickly to consider jibing, because when it comes back, we want to be on the inside going back, So we want to be able to take advantage of the shift as we jibe at the offset. Does that make sense? Or if we're sailing a knock, then obviously we want to just do a bear away. Okay? Does that make sense? Pretty basic there. But when we want to go around this mark, can we do that? Can we do a back turn like that? Not very easily, right? The boat's going to stop right there. So if we come to this mark and we go tight to the mark here, this is a lousy mark, I'm sorry, and then we try to bear away, let's say we want to jibe, okay? Let's say the breeze is out of here and our move is to jibe. If we come in tight and try to bear off, how tight can we turn? Not very tight, right? So by the time we get jibed, we're going to be way over here, right? Here's a run line over there. See what I mean? What would be another way to do that?
Go high.
Go high, exactly. So here we go. So we're going to, excellent, a plant in the crowd. So we're going to sail high. Now this is going to apply at the weather mark too, if we took the offset out. But the point is here, we're going to sail high so that we can do our wide then tight turn and go right next to the mark and jibe.
Okay, I tried that once and Joan got inside of me.
It's easy when you're in first, Greg.
Well, yeah, but here's the deal. If we round ahead of the gang and we don't do a nice bear away or put ourselves in a spot where we can jibe, then somebody gets inside us, even if they don't jibe. Even if they don't jibe, okay? They own that side of the course. And we are committed as we're facing downwind to the right side of the course. So the move is here, we want to be able to make a nice tight rounding here so that we can stay to the inside. So sailing a little bit high, and then we can go bear away and go dead downwind here, rather opposed to going out here like this. So like if we're doing a bear away though, let's say it's the other way, the wind is here. So now we want to sail a nice wide tight so we're out here. What do you think? What about jibing here real quick? What would be some of our considerations if we wanted to jibe right around this offset? Forget, we know we want to be close to the mark if we're in a lift, right? Because we want to be able to get to the middle if we want to. What would be the consideration? We want to jibe right away if there are a whole pile of boats on the offset here? Not really, right? Because they're going to be on our wind. So we want to wait till we kind of have a nice clear lane to jibe, right? What about if we're doing a bear away and we have a boat behind us? How far down do we want to go? We want to make sure that we never let them get up on our weather quarter, right? And take our breeze. So we have a lot of things to consider. Looking back at the boats that are on the offset, looking over our shoulder on our boats that are on our hip, right? And then we just want to remember again, sailing into a lift, we want to make sure that we put ourselves in a position that we can jibe if we want by making the rounding so we go tight here. And if it's a header going into the weather mark, then we want to sail tight so we can do a nice veer away and stay a little bit farther out. Does that sound cool? Make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
At the winter mark, if you're trying to sail wide and we're rounding tight, if someone gets inside you between the mark and the offside, do they have rights?
Between, oh, in here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's that 3 lengths, right? So you got to make sure that you are communicating with the other boat there, saying, "Don't go in there. You know, I'm sailing high, but you don't have rights to go in there." So you know that's where, and you're not being nasty when you communicate like that. You're just making it clear what your intentions are and what their rights are not. You know, so that's really a value. But that's a good question. And you know, so let's take the offset away. You know, let's say we're just rounding a weather mark. Same deal. We want to sail a little bit high and not try to pinch to make it around the mark. Sail a little bit high so we can come around and go down. Okay, same deal.